Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Fat Man Little Trail, the podcast where everyone is invited on the trail. I, of course, am your host, Greg the Fat Man, founder of fatmanlittletrail.com. If you need any type of hiking content and you're in the Colorado or Western area, check out fatmanlittletrail.com. I want to thank everybody who's supported the podcast. I'm all over the place now. I'm on Amazon, Google, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and pretty much any other podcast format that you would like. If you like the podcast, make sure you like and share it so that other people can find it as well. And if you want to help me out financially, so maybe I can get some theme music, there's a link in my bio where you can do that. I want to get right into my Chewing the Fat segment today. This week's guest, I met like I've met so many other people in the outdoor community, and that is through Instagram because we don't meet outdoors anymore. We only meet online, which is great. I started following Miriam about her posts. She's a Utah hiker, and each day she has another great adventure. And Miriam runs a website the website and Instagram, Explore, Hike, and Teach. And I'm happy to have her with me here today. Miriam, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
So to get started out here, just give us a little bit of a background on kind of growing up, and were you an outdoorsy person all the time, and what kind of drew you to the outdoors now?
So I grew up in New Jersey, actually, so back east, and not really an outdoor kid. I mean, besides just like playing outside with your friends or stuff, but we didn't do any hiking or really any outdoor activities with any consistency. But then I moved to Utah to go to college. Met a guy the first week I was here, and he actually took me hiking on Mount Timpanogos, which is a 12,000 foot summit. So along the Wasatch Front here. I show up in the trail head with my bottle of water and my Ked sneakers. I kid you not.
Nice.
And it's July, and at that time there's still a lot of snow in the mountains. So we got up to about 2 miles from the summit, and there's a lake called Emerald Lake there. It's still completely covered under snow. And so at that point I was terrified. All the other people have, crampons and ice picks and stuff because they're ready. And I was like, I am done. We turned around and came back off the mountain. But I got off that, even though I was terrified, it was also one of those things where I was like completely in awe. Like, this was incredible. It's beautiful. And also I can do that better. I'm kind of a little competitive by nature. And so I was like, and that kind of just gave me that bug. And we spent the rest of the summer hiking. Even though we didn't have a car, we typically walked to a lot of trailheads. And we're married now. I've been married for 26 years. So
that was a gamble. He met the woman of his dreams, and he took her on a 12,000 foot hike right away. Coming from New Jersey, though, that had to be some kind of, like you said, awe-inspiring to see a 12,000 foot peak, because in New Jersey, I'm guessing there aren't a lot of those out there.
No. Like, I should rephrase that. It's not quite 12. It's under 12. It's like 11 something. But don't want anyone to be like, hey, by the way. But, for me, it was like this huge summit and just beautiful, and like you said, there's nothing really like that out there.
So. We don't fact check too closely on the podcast, so we can go with 12,000. Okay. I had an experience about a week ago where I was up at Rocky Mountain National Park, and you have a lot of national parks in Utah too. So in Rocky Mountain, just like you said, like there were people, I'm in crampons and I've got poles and I'm like dressed in like 6 layers and like there's snow everywhere and it's slippery. And then I see these people that literally just came to visit because they thought it'd be fun, and they're in jeans and they don't have a jacket, they don't have gloves, they don't have hats, and they're walking around in, like the Air Force Ones or whatever, just sliding up and down the trails. And it was pretty interesting to see. So I can picture you perfectly on that first hike with your now husband.
I'm sure I was getting a lot of shaking heads, but it's okay. Everyone's got to start somewhere. So
exactly. And I think that there's a lot of people that we're not making fun of anybody who's out there doing it. It's just, we've all done it. It's the exact same way. And my first hike, I think I might've been in sandals, and like ended up doing like 6 miles, and I came back and my feet were like bleeding because, you don't know. And then the more you get out there, the more you learn. So,
exactly.
So your name on Instagram is Explore Hike Teach.
Mhm.
So there is a teacher element to this as well. Aren't you a teacher?
So yeah, so I started out as an elementary educator teaching second grade, taught that for a couple of years and took a break when our kids were like babies, little, and then um, went back to teaching full time, kind of eventually. A long story, but I am now teaching reading intervention. It's full time. So
So
I,
helping more on like a smaller basis, helping people
yeah,
that need that extra help reading.
yeah. So basically, um, not getting too technical, I help struggling leaders learn how to read. And these are just average kids in the classroom. 30% of the population actually struggles to learn to read, and they just need a little intensive extra little push. And usually they're okay after 6 months to a year, and then they're on their way. And they found if they can get in there early with those children and get that little investment, that they're fine the rest of their careers instead of falling through the cracks. So it's an awesome, awesome job. I love it.
That is awesome, and it's such a good program because today you see like everything's these little micro videos, and the written word is everywhere, but also like you have to kind of seek it out. Like I love to write. My website is a lot of writing, and I like to read as well. But I can see how we get into a society where everything's more and more video and picture based, that reading is easier to kind of hide if you have a problem,
Mhm.
where people might ignore it. So it's great that you're doing something like that.
Well, thank you. I love it. So-
And well, and you did, you taught the younger kids, second grade, you said back in the day. Were was that was that still a time where you were trying to take some of those lessons you learned from the outdoors into the classroom with you at all?
one of the things uh so part of my role also, in addition to teaching intervention, is I actually teach the English language learners as well, and help them develop their academic English. Um, and one of the things I love to do that I tie into the outdoors is I actually have a whole unit where we practice description. Now, one of the cool things about the school I'm in actually is there's this beautiful it's nestled up in the foothills of Salt Lake City, and there's this beautiful natural space with a trail right behind the school, right? That the school has kind of adopted these trails. These kids will cut through the trails to get down to the school even. And they've kind of adopted this little trail system, and they keep it improved, and they've learned about trail erosion and just some of these things by the use of the trail and learning not to cut those corners and things like that. But I can take that group out there and we can have that experience out in the trails, which I love. That when you're passionate about something, kids can really see that, and then that makes them excited. And so we can get out there and practice using more descriptive language um, out there, like outside, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, that's awesome because it's one thing to read a word in a book, but then especially if English isn't your first language or something like that, but to be able to be like, okay, well, I know what this is in my language, that's a rock or whatever for as an example. So that's great that you have the ability to do that with kids and use that to enhance your teaching style. But I don't want to get too hung up on the teaching stuff because the first two words that I really like in your name are explore and hike, and those are two of my favorite things to do. Um, there's a lot of bloggers and there's a lot of internet personalities that are out there from Utah. I mean, Utah's a cool state. It's kind of like Colorado. Colorado and Utah are like really outdoors minded, and people
Mhm.
love to be outdoors and they love to show off the outdoors and where they live. But I found like with a lot of the people in Utah, it's only like the national parks, like, oh, I'm in Zion, I'm in Bryce, I'm in wherever. But what I liked about your page is you also go to kind of the smaller parks, and you go to some of the smaller areas and just try to highlight the whole state. Is that something that you kind of planned on doing, or is it just something you enjoy to do?
So I enjoy. I I have a couple different philosophies about hiking. If you're going to go out and you're going to be on a popular trail, I just treat it like a party. It's like, I'm just going to be out there. I'm going to be saying hi. I'm talking to people, offering to take pictures for them. Like when you're at that cool little spot, just whatever. Right. Because we're here and we're all enjoying this space together. Right. But my absolute bliss is being out on a trail and being out there kind of like by yourself, right? And you kind of get the sense of like where you feel like, wow, I'm discovering this place. Obviously there's a trail there, it's been built, it's not, but you just have that cool feeling of like, wow, I'm here like by myself or with the person I'm with, discovering this place. And so we like to seek out trails that that aren't well known. And what I found as we've done that is, in my opinion, that there are just as many trails outside of the national parks that are just as incredible as what you can find in the national parks. And there are bonuses. If you have a dog, you can bring your dog. No, a lot of these places there are no fees to bring to visit, which is great, which is can increase accessibility for some people, and just actually just kind of having that solitude, that kind of commune with nature that you can have when you're having those quiet moments, which I love.
There is nothing better than like showing up to like a lake or a gully or something that's like the end of the hike and you're the only one
Mhm.
there and you've got
Yeah.
like 20-30 minutes to an hour, and that you don't get that in national parks. In national parks, you're lucky if you're not bumping shoulders with the person next to you at any given time. But one of the other things that I like that you do is not every hike is 20 miles and not every hike is 2 miles. Like you really vary up your difficulties and your the length of the hikes and how easy or hard they are. Is that something that you do to kind of show people that you can still enjoy yourself without having to climb a mountain?
It's funny you say that because I'm actually kind of a miles junkie. It's kind of left
Right.
over from my marathon running days. So I love putting in long miles. However, that's just not realistic, I think, as an adult for most people to get out there, myself included. So I love being able to get off work, you know, drive home, throw on some clothes and get out and be like, wow, I just got a 3 mile hike in. Like, and it's a work day and I can still go home and do my regular routine and stuff. But I just got out here and I got to go sit by this cool mountain lake or,
Mm.
this waterfall or wherever. And so I just more vary it up because I just always want to find that like next favorite trail, right? What your favorite trail is, like whatever one you're on at the moment, in my opinion. It's like, because that's like, this is the coolest thing ever. So yeah. So that's
I
kind of why I just basically do research and be like, oh, what sounds cool or what looks cool or that looks like it has no pictures on all trails. I don't think very many people have done this trail. I wonder what it's like. Oh, I'm gonna go check it out. So
Nice. I have friends that are definitely the people that if it's not 15 miles and 4,000 feet of elevation, it doesn't even count as a hike. And they don't look like when they're looking at all trails or where they're looking at whatever their source is, they're looking around and they just dismiss so many of these wonderful hikes
mhm.
because they're not the length and the distance that they were hoping for. And I think that's too bad because I found some great small hikes too.
Well, I agree, and a lot of it is about like what are your goals for hiking, and some people it's like, people like that really their primary goal becomes like about the challenge of it, and not that the tertiary goals around that aren't like, oh, seeing this incredible view at the summit or whatever they're tackling, obviously, because that is all part of it. But that's kind of more the focus is like, I just really want to push myself and test my capabilities, which I mean, that feels amazing when you tackle that summit, that when I finally did get back to tackle Timpanogos and got to the top and enjoyed those views, that was a sweet moment.
Oh,
So,
I bet. I have a hike out here that I've tried. I think it was the fourth try before I actually did it. And like once I finally finished it, it felt amazing. And it wasn't even like it was kind of like you where you got caught in the snow and or, deep snow or whatever. And like for me, it was like the first day I came there, it was windy, like blowing
mhm.
60. The next day, like the clouds rolled in, I turned around. So then when I finally made it, I was just like, oh, this feels amazing.
Well, that's something I actually try to post too. Is I've posted. I'm like, hey, there's this hike and I didn't finish it today, and that's okay. And I've actually gone out and hikes knowing I had not enough time to finish the trail, and I'm just like, I'm just gonna go out and enjoy this because I just want to be outside.
I
So
actually,
yeah, go
well,
ahead. Sorry.
I was gonna say I actually wrote a blog called "I Tried and I Lost and That's Okay," because I think so many people who at least started hiking recently, like so many people started hiking recently, and like they think that because they start a hike, they have to finish a hike, and people can get into really dangerous situations that way, and especially the people who have just started out hiking don't realize how dangerous and how quickly it can become dangerous for a number of reasons. So it's good to hear that there's other people who are okay with not finishing a hike if they have to.
Yeah. Yeah. Like you said, sometimes it's well safety first, right? Always.
Absolutely.
So
So you're not, I don't want to make it sound like you only do these other hikes though. You still do love the national parks and the national park system there in Utah.
yeah.
And what are some of your favorite parks out there in what is Utah called? I can't remember. The Happy State or something like that?
The beehive state.
The Beehive State.
The
There you
beehive
go.
state, it has to do with like, bees are like workers, right? And just like being industrious and work. So the beehive state, and that's kind of where that comes from, which
Gotcha.
there's a whole long story. We don't need to go into it, but that's the kind of crux to it. So that's like a really cool history. But so sorry, the question was what
The
my
question,
favorite.
yeah, what are your favorite of those national parks out there in the Beehive State?
Definitely Capitol Reef. I'll tell you a story. So, when we had our kids, we of course we were carrying them on our backs. And, at some point they actually start getting too big and
Mhm.
not wanting to be carried. And so for us anyway, we started dialing back how long the hikes are that we were doing so the kids could participate. Because our goal at that point was like, we want the kids to like hiking too. And so as they grow up, that they'll grow as hikers and want to do it, right? And want to be
Mhm.
out there and tackle those trails. And we had a neighbor and they had just got back from Capitol Reef and they're like, you've got to go. It's the best park. We just hiked 2 slot canyons. They were both only 2 miles round trip a piece with our kids. Like, this is where you want to go. And Capitol Reef, and that's kind of where we fell in love with that park. And back, this was 18 years ago. And back at that time, there really wasn't very many people at that park too. So we would go,
Mhm.
even the main trails in the park, you'd go and like maybe see one or two other people at that time, which isn't the case anymore, but it's still one of the quieter parks in Utah, which is awesome. And but that so and they've that's kind of where that started because that park is really the hidden gem of Utah, I think.
I
So
absolutely agree with that because when I was planning a Utah trip, everybody's like, well, you have to see Zion, you have to see Bryce, you have to see Arches, you have to do Canyonlands. And I was like, okay, that's a lot. And I was like, what about Capitol Reef? And everybody's like, I don't really know about that. And I ended up going to Capitol Reef and it might have been my favorite. I didn't make it to Zion because I went to Capitol Reef, but I think I liked it more than I liked some of the other parks. I mean, it's just beautiful. It's not as crowded.
mhm.
It will be now because it's the most popular hiking blog out there. I'm just kidding, but you didn't have to laugh that hard, Miriam. But um, but there's just so much to do there. And the thing that surprised me the most about Capitol Reef was walking or like driving into the middle of the park, and like it's that kind of Utah red, like kind of red rock everywhere and sand and dirt, and then all of a sudden there's this bright green orchard, which was just the most beautiful thing that I have ever seen. Um, Outside of Capitol Reef,
Okay.
you've got like tell us a little bit about some of those national parks out there in Utah. Some of the ones you didn't mention, like Bryce and things like that.
Okay. All right. So I don't know. What do you want to hear about? It's like a lot. Um, what I will say is some of the best hikes you will find in any national park, and I'm going to just generalize this too, because just my general experience is absolutely you want to hit those star hikes. Don't miss them,
Mhm.
but don't pass up the ones you don't really hear about. They're going to knock your socks off. There's going to be something about them that's going to be amazing. So, I mean, there's just like the primitive trail that's out in Arches.
Oh, I love
So
that trail.
definitely a quieter trail there. Um, that that was my absolute favorite trail in the park when we went. And that was the first time we went to Arches. We were pretty young, and so we hiked just about every front hike in a day in the park. We hiked
Mm.
them all, just like pounding them out. To be young and in shape again. But that was by far our favorite that day. So
Yeah, that's a great hike. One I did was called Mossy Cave, and I don't even remember which park that was in.
it's in
Like,
Bryce. Yeah.
is that in Bryce? Okay, yeah, it's like the backside of Bryce when you came in.
Mhm.
I stopped in that one, and then Grand Wash in Capitol Reef is a great little hike.
Yeah.
And then like Mesa Arch for Canyonlands, if you do it at
Mhm.
sunrise, is one of the most amazing experiences I've ever seen. Um,
Yeah. I will say, probably, the water pocket fold district of Capitol Reef is overlooked
yeah,
and people just pass by it. And there are 5 slot canyons down that road,
really.
and that's just part of that district. There's just tons of great hiking back there, and it's just really quiet. So it's pretty awesome. And my favorite is Upper Mealy Twist up there. There are 9 arches, 2 slot canyon sections, and then you can there's about a half-mile climb, and you come up this bench, and you have this view of the Strike Valley and just the rock formations, and then a Hanksville off in the distance, and the mountains, the Henry Mountains. It's just stunning. I mean, to get all that in one hike, I mean, how can we pass that up, right? So it's pretty awesome.
Now I have to plan another trip out there. What about one thing that I like too, and I was gonna add, I didn't know what kind of teacher you were beforehand, so I thought maybe you were a history teacher. Maybe you like the historical values of Capitol Reef and of Fruta and of the petroglyphs and stuff. Do you want to talk about those, even though I know that's not your specialty now?
It is fascinating to the history of these national parks. And obviously, more than anything, I do want to talk about, like, not that I know all the history and things like that, but the indigenous people that were there very first, right? And that's,
Mhm.
I think, the most important thing to highlight. And I think sometimes that gets overlooked, that these places are, a lot of them are really sacred spaces for them. And that when we visit national parks, we need to remember that they are sacred spaces. And I just feel like this connection with nature when I'm out there the same way. But it's fascinating to also look in, and like you said, you come in these just beautiful green orchards in the middle of this canyon, and just to think of the people, like the settlers that came in and took, kind of in this little river canyon valley, and were able to establish these beautiful orchards and this cute little community there, right in
Yeah.
there. And it's just beautiful, the work hard. So you can see the beautiful remnants of the history in that, the working farm with the Gifford house there that sells those awesome pies and the homemade ice cream. That's from that kind of one of those families that were like core in building that community, and like that one room schoolhouse. And you can kind of see all the, historic nature, and then just all the heirloom fruits, which you can actually go and pick those fruits in season.
Can you
Anyone,
really?
yeah, you can go pick from the orchards, and you pay for which they weigh it, and you pay for it, but that's pretty cool. So,
That's because I think I read somewhere there's like 50 different fruit trees that
yeah.
they've imported in there, and that's pretty amazing. I'm going to count you as a local because you live in Utah.
Okay.
What would you suggest is the best time to visit the national parks that are out there in Utah?
By far my favorite is winter. I know
Mhm.
it's not the most congenial time for some people, but mostly because it's so quiet. But also, when you're in the desert, it's not always as cold as you think it's going to be. That desert sun can be really warm. So we'll go down, and it's all obviously when the sun's out, and I'll be hiking, and I'm like stripping off all my extra layers, and wishing I had short sleeves on sometimes. So that's actually my favorite time to go. But if you want to really hit that sweet spot, I'd say spring or fall by
Yep.
far.
And I
You
saw pictures of, I think it was Bryce Canyon, like the Queen's Garden area, and it was
know,
like completely covered in snow, like a thin layer of snow, and it was the
mhm.
most fascinating, beautiful thing that I'd seen with these red hoodoos sticking up from like a base of snow. It was just amazing.
Bryce is truly magical in winter. And there's this back trail if you go down to the city of Tropic and you drive in, there's this road in the back. You can hike in the back. And so you don't have to hike down into the canyon and then hike back up out of the canyon. You hike it flat. So it's longer, but it's flat. So if you're not like a person who, especially people coming from places at sea level where like the elevation's really getting at you, and Bryce can get cold because it's like up at 10,000 feet at the top of the canyon there. If you hike in the back way there, it's pretty nice.
Where were you a year ago, Miriam? When I hiked in and then tried to hike out, and I was struggling. I forgot. There's like that little, I forgot the name of it, but there's like, it's like kind of a little switchback that goes straight up the side of the canyon wall. And I was just,
I can't remember the name of those, the switchbacks there. Yeah, the one you see all online all the time because they're just so picturesque, Yeah.
Brutal though. And I'm from Colorado. I'm from altitude. Like you'd think that I would have handled it better, but you recently also just got back from the Tetons, didn't you? How was the Tetons?
So Tetons and Yellowstone, we just honestly drove through really quick. So my daughter's up in Helena right now, and so we were just going up for her graduation, and so we hit up Yellowstone on the way up and Teton on the way back. Just a quick pop in, but we've been to both those parks probably 6 times each, and so we were just like, how can you kind of drive within an hour and like not go in those places and be like, so it was nice to just kind of, the hike we had planned was the trail ended up being closed, which is like that in spring. Word to the wise, if you're traveling to Yellowstone, you gotta be ready in those shoulder seasons for like whatever the conditions are going to throw at you. Even Memorial Day weekend, you're going to get snow possibly. So but great time to see bears. Definitely saw some grizzlies up there. And then Teton, just some of those lower elevation lakes, beautiful, and like hardly anyone there. It's awesome. Some amazing reflections out at Lay Lake and such like that.
So how many national parks have you been to now?
Oh God. I think last count it was 28 maybe. I think just down and count. It's something like that.
What's your favorite one so far?
I hate to pick favorites. That's not fair, but okay.
And so also next question is, what is your favorite child?
My favorite what?
Who's your favorite child? I'm just kidding. It's like picking
I love
picking your favorite park is the same.
I will say that one of the ones that has stuck with me the longest that I still am kicking myself that I've not been back to is Glacier. I loved that park so much, and definitely it deserves all the love it gets. I love it, but I need to get back there. We took our kids and they were pretty little, and so we got some hiking in, but definitely not as much as I would have preferred. So yeah.
And what is a bucket list national park that you still?
Well, the next one that we're going to visit that's been on my bucket list is actually North Cascades. Okay. So I'm really excited. We're actually heading there in August. So we're going to tick that one off the list. And then definitely Yosemite, if you can believe it. I have not been to Yosemite. So
really?
Nope. And that has been on my list forever, but it's kind of this catch-22 because like quiet parks, Yosemite is not one of them. So, but it doesn't matter because it's just one of those places that's just deserves all the love it gets, and you can't pass it up. So
I feel like going back to the earlier conversation, like if you want to go to a national park, you kind of have to expect that you're going to go and have crowds and deal with the crowds. And that's more of just an entertainment type of experience as opposed to, until you know the park well enough to know like the secret back areas that you can get into. So yeah, you got to take the good with the bad with the national parks is the only problem with that. I want to switch gears just a little bit here and talk about your website. What is your website for the people out there?
Okay. So the name is, it's explorehiketeach.com, but it's the title is Miriam Hikes and Explores. And basically on there, I just share the different travels and hikes I go on. I have lots of plans for what else I want to add. It's a pretty new project, but You can go on there. So for example, one of the hikes is like fall hikes and drives in Utah. So it's like highlights, just where you can go to see like the best fall color out on the trail. Or if you're not big on the trail, it's like, oh, you can drive through these areas. And because really the outdoors, we I firmly believe that people who experience a place and fall in love with it want to protect it and want to care for it. And I feel like the best way to do that is to help people love it just as much as I do. Right. So, and making it accessible. And that's about doing the different levels of hikes too, because
Sure.
not everyone ever going to be able to hike a 15-mile hike. Right. So,
And the people that aren't prepared to go out into nature, or that don't have some of that information, are the ones that are going to be causing the issues, I feel like. And not really, they probably don't even know that it's an issue that they're causing. But
mhm.
if they're only going to do like or they're going to go out for a 15-mile hike but they've never hiked before, they're going to get into a situation where they're off trail, or they're leaving trash because they didn't bring a garbage bag with them, or they don't have enough water, so they're trying to drink out of a stream without you know fixing the water and
Well,
stuff
they
like
don't
that.
even
So
realize that, what, you just left that orange peel and yeah, it's like, well, it's
mhm,
biodegradable, but it's like, I don't know the stats, but 10 years that it's going to sit there before it finally breaks down properly, right? So
mhm.
obviously if you thought about that, you'd be like, oh, maybe I wouldn't want to leave it there. So it's supposed to be like, oh, some animal ate it. Well, that animal might get sick because that's not part of their, you know, regular diet, things like that. So,
Or
all
that
that.
animal might then say, hey, I
Mhm,
saw a human throw that tasty little apple core out, and
mhm.
so maybe if I get closer to humans they'll give me more apple cores, and then that leads to other issues on the trail.
Yes.
So the website is, you said it's a new project, but it's geared mostly to give people ideas of the ways to recreate
So yeah,
responsibly.
so just a lot of just like hikes out. So like for example, last summer we spent time on the Orcas Islands in Washington, which was amazing. Recommend that to anyone. So I highlighted all the details of the trip. Have another post about like the 8 best day hikes, in my opinion, in the Uinta Mountain Range, which is here in Utah. That that's one thing I really actually like to highlight on my Instagram page is it's more Utah's more than just the national parks, but
Mhm.
also Utah's green. I can't tell you how many times I comments on my posts. I'm like, this is Utah? Like, what? Like, I thought it was just desert. And so that there's just so much out there. So,
And that was what I was going to lead into next, is your Instagram page, where you're very active on your Instagram page. And you do a lot of the videos that everybody loves these days. And you have, like I said, the stuff I've been asking you about is all stuff that I've seen on that Instagram page about the different hikes and all that. So where can people find your Instagram?
so it's explore.hike.teach, which, when I was new to Instagram now, kind of the regrets to put the dots in there just because it's a little more cumbersome to type in. But that's where I'm at, explore hike, teach.
And what
So
type of content, one more just for people listening?
okay, so I like to highlight Utah based adventures. I do highlight other places I go, but the primary focus is Utah adventures. You'll mostly see things that are more, and I say off the beaten path, it's not necessarily by like the general public at large, right? I mean, if you talk to local, they'll be like, oh yeah, I know that hike, whatever. But also places that you won't see otherwise. There's a lot of resources out there. I also like to educate on how to find your own hikes and how to be prepared out there, and like what resources and tools are out there to make your experience better. Like I just recently did a post about hiking poles and the pros and cons of hiking poles, and how they're a great tool, basically.
Each one of your posts is like a 30-second lesson on Instagram. That's how I look at it. So, Before we get into, I want to take a quick break in a second, and then we'll get into the very challenging buffet rapid fire questions. It's a lot of stress, but before we get into that, any final thoughts for people listening right now?
Just don't be afraid to get out there and do it. We all are new sometime, and I, even as someone who's been hiking for a few years, I still sometimes make mistakes, and still like forget to check my bag and make sure like, oh, every little thing's in there or whatever, of my 10 essentials and things like that. Sometimes like if you use something. So, just get out there, be smart, obviously, but and ask questions. I love questions. So I'm always there to help if someone wants to know something. So
that is a perfect way to end the first segment. And I have questions for you on the other end of this break. Stick around. We'll be right back.
All right, thanks.
Welcome back to Fat Man Little Trail, the podcast. We are talking with Miriam from Explore Hike Teach, the Instagram and the website as well. Miriam, thanks for coming back with us. Are you ready now? This is where it gets serious. The always stressful rapid fire buffet questions. Are you ready?
Hang on.
This is where I need that drum roll.
Oh,
Number one question.
Okay. Oh.
Would you rather be camping, glamping, or staying in a hotel on your adventures?
Oh, this diva needs a hotel.
You know what? I like it too. Like, I hate to admit it, but I'm like, nope, yep, hotel.
I will camp and backpack, but my preference is definitely a warm bed and a shower.
Well, and like sleeping on the ground hurts. Like at 20, it doesn't hurt, but once you get over 40, it starts to hurt.
Yep.
So, all right. Number two, would you rather fly to your destination or take a road trip?
That's hard. I think as long as it's if I can drive it in a day, meaning about 13 hours or less, then I'm all about driving. So
I love me the road trips. Number three, what is your go-to snack on a trail?
Cliff blocks. They're like big square gummy bears. I love them because again, it's a holdover from my running marathon days. So, but they have a little bit of caffeine, so they just give you that little bit of energy boost, which is nice. So that's kind of my favorite. It's kind of different, but there you go.
What are they called again?
Cliff blocks, spelled BLOKS. Blocks. Okay. Yeah. So they're just like big squares like this, but they're almost like a gummy bear texture. So you can get them different flavors.
I'm gonna have to try those out. I haven't heard of those before.
Yeah. So I really like them. I like the tropical punch flavor because I'm like 5 apparently. So
I love it. Number four, what is the first thing that you eat or drink after a hike?
Honestly, whatever is easy in the fridge. But like if I were to like go like maybe somewhere, I'm a pasta person. Like okay. Pasta. Yeah.
The number one answer to this one is a beer.
I don't drink, so I'm boring that way. So.
Yeah, I don't really either. One of the things I do is I love to find locally owned restaurants near each hike. That's just kind of that's part of my scam. Number five, and the last question, if you could be anywhere in the world right now, would you rather be in the forest, on a mountain, or at the beach?
On a mountain. Absolutely.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. I did have somebody cheat and said they wanted to be in the forest that's on a mountain sitting next to a lake. So they tried to get all three on me, but I wouldn't let that. The judges didn't allow it.
I like the way they think, though.
I do too. A mountain lake that's surrounded by trees.
Given between 3 good choices, just pick them all, right?
Exactly. Miriam, you made it through the buffet rapid fire questions. Congratulations.
Well, thank you.
If I had prizes, this is where you would get one. Yes. But I don't. Your prize is actually this. Each week I do a hike of the week segment where I tell people about my favorite hike. But since you won the buffet rapid fire questions, I'll let you pick the hike of the week this week. Tell everybody about one of your favorite hikes.
Well, again, I don't necessarily have a favorite hike, but one that I do every year is up in the Uinta Mountains, which is about an hour and a half from Salt Lake. And it's called the 21 Lake Loop. So in 7 miles, you hike past 21 mountain and or alpine lakes. And, the elevation gain is only about 700 feet over the 7 miles. It's the loop. And so it's just one of those hikes that you can just enjoy it, cruise through pretty fast. It's just absolutely stunning. So it's called the 21 Lake Loop in the
That
winter
sounds
time.
like an
So
amazing hike.
like I said, it's definitely one of those like ones you want to go back to every year and see. So
I don't think I've had more than 5 lakes on a hike, and that was like one of them was a puddle, and I just decided to count it as a lake.
Well, and these aren't like going to be huge alpine lakes. Some of them are very big, but some of them are definitely smaller. But
Kind of like the glacier melt type of lake.
well, right, but the Uinta Mountains definitely have just tons of lakes everywhere, which is a lot of fun. So definitely one of those places, if you're ever in the area in the summer, want to go visit. It's great. It's a great place to go hiking.
That sounds amazing.
Yeah.
Now we're to the part of the show that I actually am a little concerned about. This is the Ask the Fat Man question, our segment where Miriam, you get to ask me any questions you'd like, hopefully hiking related, but as long as it's not math, I'll be okay.
Okay, right. I can feel that, right? Okay, so trying to decide what I want to ask first. Okay, so you're in Colorado. I'm not even 100% sure where in Colorado, like if you're in the Denver area, the eastern part of the state. Like,
I am in Denver, yeah.
Okay. So give me your top 3 like no miss hikes that are under the radar. Not the ones that like, oh, everyone's heard of. I don't know what is it, Sky Pond, or I don't know. I shamefully don't know a ton of Colorado hikes. So
sure.
What would you recommend?
Okay, so the top 3. There's so many trails out here. Like Colorado's unique in that like there's probably 150 trails just in Jefferson County, which is the county right next to Denver. But the trails that I will hit you with, one of my personal favorites is Elk Falls in Staunton State Park. They've created a new parking lot, so it's actually shorter now, but it used to be about like an 8-mile round trip. And it's through this beautiful, like, they have tons of these lodgepole pines all over that area. And then you kind of get to a pond, and then you get down, you have to like hike down to this waterfall. It's kind of hidden. And it was the first, I think it was the first waterfall that I saw when I was in Colorado, or when I started hiking. It was the first waterfall that I'd ever seen out in, the middle of nowhere. And it was kind of amazing. Another good one. Let me think of another good one. If you're coming, that one's too popular. I was gonna say Garden of the Gods is a great place to go. It's down in Colorado Springs, and it's like crazy popular, but it's just beautiful. It's all these wonderful rock formations, and people like fly into Denver, they don't know about it. There's an area called Brainerd Lake, which was going to be at one point part of Rocky Mountain National Park, but they ended up splitting it off, and it's part national forest and it's part wilderness out there. And it's one of those where there's no 14ers, but I think there's like 13,000 foot mountains up there, and there's 4 big alpine lakes, and like the parking lot's at 10,000 feet, so you just kind of go up from there. So it's kind of like high altitude hiking, and just absolutely beautiful. So that's one of my favorite places.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And then another place I like that is kind of like not a lot of people know about, I mean they do but they don't, it's a place called Hoosier Pass, which is over by Breckenridge. And there's this group of 414ers called Decalibron, and it's Democrat something Democrat Lincoln, I don't remember what that one's called, and then Braun is the 4th one. So they call it Decalibron, and you can do all 4 of them at once, but that's for people who are in really good shape. For those normal people, there's this place called Hoosier Pass, and Hoosier Pass is just, a typical mountain pass, but there's a trail behind it, and you can actually go up onto this mountain that gets you to about 11,000, 12,000 feet, something like that. But your view is unobstructed of Decalibron, of these 14,000 peaks, or 14,000 foot peaks that are just sitting there, and it's just absolutely stunning.
Wow, that sounds amazing.
And it's only like the loop is like 2 miles, I think, on Hoosier Pass.
What?
And, yeah, you get to see this the entire time. It's beautiful.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. That sounds amazing. See, that's the kind of thing where people who are like, "Oh, I'm only going to do a hike," you're like, you're missing out.
And you can find all of this on fatmanlittletrail.com. See how I plugged that there? That's professional.
I love it. So let's say, so do you prefer solo hiking or hiking with people?
I do prefer solo hiking. I'm kind of one of those extroverted introvert people who like I'm fine talking to people, but it takes a lot of my energy. So I also like to be alone. So getting out kind of by myself. I also live right downtown Denver, so like there's chaos everywhere around me.
Mm-hmm.
And but then going out and getting into a trail by myself and going a few miles where like I might not see anybody is really does wonders for one's mental health, and also just kind of clears the head and gives you that inner peace moment where you get to just kind of talk to yourself. I said this, I forgot where I wrote this, but I wrote it somewhere that once you're comfortable with yourself, and you have to be comfortable with yourself because it's the only person you have to talk to when you solo hike. And as soon as you've answered all your own questions, now you can actually enjoy your moments when you're out there by yourself. Because when I first started solo hiking, it was literally, I was going through a really stressful time when I started hiking, and I literally had every question known to man going through my head and trying to answer them all. And I'd start to kind of figure myself out just by doing all these solo hikes and spending that alone time, with no cell service, and no way to check the Instagram feed. So I was literally just, it was just me and the woods, and there was no escaping me. And once I got comfortable with myself to the point that um I'd answered all those questions I had for myself, then it made those walks so much better. And I can just really enjoy it now out by myself, just kind of blank mind and just taking in all of the beauty that nature has.
Mm-hmm. It's a really a kind of a meditative experience, I feel like,
Exactly.
which is awesome.
And when I hike with other people, I tend to talk a lot because that's just what I do when I'm around people.
Yeah.
Hence the podcast.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay. What do I want to say? When was that moment when you were hooked with hiking? Like, I know we all have that moment where you say, I want to try, but when was what was that moment that hooked you? That made it that you wanted it to become your lifestyle.
Sure. I don't know if there was a moment that made me want to, that like I knew for a fact I was hooked, but there was a moment that was really emotional for me. It was like at the beginning of the pandemic. I just lost my job. I was kind of going through a lot of, these issues, and I came to this trail, and it's not even that hard of a trail. But you're like in the woods the whole time, and I never done the trail before. And all of a sudden you come out from the woods and you've got like a half of a mile ledge. It's not even a ledge, it's just like kind of the ridge line that goes a half a mile, and it's unobstructed views that just kind of go out for about 50 miles of mountaintop and rolling hills and pine. And it was just one of the most beautiful. It actually like stopped me. So I emerged from this tree line and saw this, and it was the first time I'd seen a view like that. And it just kind of like, I went from being like really stressed out to knowing that everything was going to be okay. I didn't know how it was going to be okay, but I just knew everything would be okay at that point. And that's when I was like, that's a good feeling. And I kind of want to have that feeling again. So I hiked again, and I didn't get that exact feeling, but I got another feeling. And then like I hiked again and got another feeling. And like each time I hiked in a different place, I got a similar feeling that was just like unique to that place.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a moment on each hike where I looked and saw something I'd never seen before, or I kind of felt something I hadn't felt before, or I accomplished something I'd never accomplished before. And I realized that it all kind of built onto each other, and it just made like that feeling that much better.
Yeah.
Did I answer that question okay?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
So, yeah. Awesome.
Sometimes I forget the question and I drift.
I've never done that. I don't know what you're talking about. So
Are those all the questions? Any more
that was
questions for
all
Ask
three.
the Fat Man?
Yeah, that's all. That's what I had for you.
All right. Well, I think your questions were harder than my rapid fire questions, so I might need a
Oh,
refund
sorry.
there.
Sorry.
No, they were excellent questions. And Miriam, thank you so much for joining me today.
Absolutely. I'm so glad that you had me here. Thank you so much.
I had a lot of fun, and everybody out there, go ahead and check out explorehiketeach.com or explore period hike period teach period on Instagram. I got that right in my
Yes, you got it
humor.
right.
Okay, explore hike teach on Instagram, and like I said, it's like little 30-second lessons every day, and it's wonderful. So check it out. I want to thank everybody for listening in this week. Again, if you enjoyed it, make sure you hit like or share on that platform that you are on, and I will get back with another episode of the podcast here coming up really soon. Hope to see you all on the trail again real soon. Until then, happy hiking.